Hello. How are
What's up?
you?
Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great.
It sounds like there might be like a little bit of like a background noise though.
Yeah, it's like cars, but my house is kind of a zoo, so
I
I'm
feel
I'm
that.
in my I'm in my new greenhouse.
Oh my gosh, how magical.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, awesome. I just want to say first and foremost, thank you for being here and everything that you do. I'm so grateful for you coming and sharing all of your knowledge live and not just once, but then again in Spanish right afterwards. So I'm very grateful for you. Yeah, and today we are talking about the High Priestess and the Empress, which is so exciting and right on point.
That's
Hopefully,
right.
the slides did us some justice.
Yeah,
Right.
these two cards are quite interesting, and they're kind of related. And I don't know. I always praise Crawley and Lady Harris for the great artwork, but I think in this instance, I think Pixie Smith kind of beat them. I mean, the art of Lady Harris, it cannot be matched. But the symbolism in the Rider Waite Smith deck, it is better. Is better communicated, shall we say? Yeah, and I'm glad you started with the Rider Waite because I went through my notes
Okay.
because, and so this is what my notes say. It says the High Priestess is the main subject of the card. In her right hand, she carries the Cruz Ansata. Uh, I guess this is kind of like for a deck that I built, but the art kind of sucked. And so, in this instance, the Cruz Ansata is the cross that the High Priestess wears in the Rider Waite. She has it on her chest. It's quite huge. It says this cross represents the tree of life. In her left hand, she kind of hides it, but it's supposed to be some type of like rhythm device. She wears a long headdress with a with a crown of Isis, and that is what you see. And in fact, in the Thot deck, the crown of Isis in the High Priestess and the Empress, she's both wearing them. So Crowley equated the High Priestess and the Empress, even though each card in the Golden Dawn and each card in the Path Working is very like the positions of these two cards are very different. The Empress is almost to the top, and the High Priest is kind of towards the middle of the tree. So the Empress has a very prominent position, and the High Priestess kind of doesn't. But let's continue. So I don't know why he Crawley equates both. What I'm trying to say is that I don't know why Crowley equates the High Priestess and the Empress because they're very different. Okay, let's continue. Embroidered in her headdress, she carries the planetary powers, which is the crown of Isis. Alchemical medicine is basically broken up into the science of planetary powers. The planetary powers in her dress are her levels of mastery, hence the priesthood of Isis. Embroidered, she sits on a throne. The pillows on the platform she sits on. She kind of sits in an uncomfortable way. In fact, in the Pixie Smith, her leg doesn't really quite look symmetrical.
Hmm.
She sits up straight, but her leg is never really quite symmetrical. They and in the Thought deck, she just kind of like a, I don't know, kind of like a god, like an Egyptian goddess. She's very Isis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the Thought deck, she has a number of symbols beneath her, which are kind of like her masteries and powers. But then again, Crowley gets more Greek because we see the pine cones, the thyrsus.
Mm-hmm.
At the bottom, you have some purple pine cones and you have some green pine cones, which I kind of like in a way, because he's basically telling us that the high priestess, well, he didn't even call it the high priestess, he just calls her the priestess. It's basically Hecate, because if you notice, she has like moons on different levels. So that is a symbol of Hecate. And the pine cones, the thyrsus, are the symbols of her tightness. And so he's basically quoting her as Hecate. Now, one thing that we should mention is that in the Golden Dawn, the high priestess is represented by Gabriel. And the reason why Gabriel is because she is representative of the moon. And also, that little symbol to the left of the priestess name, it looks like a noon, but that should not be a noon. That should be a gimel. We went through like Aleph, Beth, and now we're at gimel.
Mm-hmm.
And so the moon, the moon's angel is Gabriel. So one thing that is not really quite explaining in almost any book is that the tarot is ruled, well, certain cards in the major arcana are represented by angels. So that is where a lot of the magic of tarot comes in, because tarot, most people use it for divination, but it should not only be used for divination. It can be used also to make angelic calls, and when you make angelic calls, you make spells. So that's where tarot can be used can be used for spells. And this is one of the first cards where we can start to get into spells. Now, if we use a Crowley deck, we can use Hecate as a spell worker. If we use the Rider Waite, we can use kind of Gabriel. So, but it's kind of funny because you have the High Priestess, which is Gabriel. We usually denote by a female, but Gabriel is kind of male and female. Gabriel just simply means God is my strength. All right, let's continue with my descriptions. The two pillars that are next to her in the Thot deck, they're not even labeled. One is male, and the other one is female. The reason why you want to switch to the Rider Waite one.
Yep.
One has a B and the other one has a J. Now that is a very Masonic thing.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, that is a very Masonic thing. The B stands for boss, and the J stands for Joachim. Now,
are you saying boss like BOSS?
BOAS. That's how usually spell it.
Oh, okay. And then what about the J one?
Joachim or Joachim. I don't know how to say it.
Joachim?
I usually say it in the Hebrew is Joachim or Jacquin, or I don't know.
Okay.
Joachim is like Jot Kaf Mem, Jot Kaf Mem, Joachim or Joachim, I don't know. And then Boaz is just like Beth. I think they use a nun, Boaz. Then and then is Azadi. And so it's basically Joachim and Boaz, or Boaz and Joachim. The significance of this is that those are the two lineages of King Solomon. So one of them, it is I forgot, I didn't went to read this in the Bible lately, but one of them is his paternal grandfather from his dad, and the other was a paternal grandfather from his mom. So today Jews are usually get their descendants from their mother, but back then the lineage of Judaism came through the father. And so those two are the lineages of his father. Basically, I'm a Jew from my dad and I'm a Jew from my mom. But this comes a little bit more into, you can get a little bit more esoteric, because Solomon, or Shlomo, doesn't just mean a king, Solomon. People think that it also means the son. So like Shlomo is like Shemesh, or Solomon, like the son. So he is the son, And then the one, the darkness and the light, is basically kind of like night and day. And
Mm.
this also kind of comes into play a little bit into Apollo and Dionysus, as described by Nonus. Dionysus is the lord of the night, and Apollo is the lord of the day. And so when we equate it to the high priestess, is basically she is the intermediary between them. But then, if we notice her white tunic, that is also the white tunic of the hegemon in the Golden Dawn.
Mm.
And the hegemon, that is exactly his job. He is the divider between light and darkness. So
Mm.
all of these symbols come into play in this card. And she also has like the crescent moon at her feet, very Hecate. But not necessarily Hecate, more of a Gabriel, because that's kind of like the Golden Dawn tradition. But it's obvious that it has some like uh, very Hecatean symbolism,
Hmm.
because Hecate is the one that crosses the livings from the living into the dead and the dead to the living, which is basically what it is. It's like she's an intermediary between light and day. I mean, night and day, or living and the death. And if we notice in that little kind of like I don't know what it is, like a tarp or covering or what it is in the back, we have pomegranates.
Oh, I was about to ask you what those were.
Yeah, those are the pomegranates of Persephone.
Mm.
So once again, the world of the dead is behind her, and she's looking at the world of the living before her.
Oh, that's so cool. Is there was it any significance? Obviously, there is significance to the seven, particularly the.
The seven, you see seven pomegranates?
I do.
What do you think those mean?
I'm assuming the chakras or the Kabbalah, or I'm not really. Don't test me live.
There are no chakras in the Golden Dawn,
Oh, that's fair.
and so there are seven classic planets.
Okay. Oh, I could have guessed.
Yeah, so we have the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and then we have Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn.
Okay.
So those are the seven classic planets, and the reason why they're the classic ones is because those are the only ones that we can see without the use of a telescope.
Mm.
Then the other astrology kind of came into play, and people were able to see Neptune with a telescope, and now they included Neptune and Uranus and some other planets. But the classic planets are the seven.
Okay.
Those are the ones that it's like we talked about also, like they're in the Greek magical papyri a lot.
Hmm.
I've been studying some really interesting stuff as to like how even like Genesis is actually like a magical work. I didn't
Mm.
even know that. It's the eighth book of Moses, where like the main god laughs first, and then he creates the firmament, and then the god laughs second, and then he creates the division between the light and the day and the night. And so it's like a god laughing, but it's kind of funny because the Greek magical papyri doesn't use the Bible at all. And in fact, the Bible, we really didn't know that much about the Bible until like centuries later. They were just spread out books until like the like Council of Nicaea, where they started to gather the books together, where we start gathering kind of like the first drafts, that the first collections of books that make up the Bible.
Mm.
And so the Greek magical papyri doesn't really use the Bible. It uses some aspects of the Bible, like Jesus or Moses, or even the apocryphal books. It uses Abraxas, but it doesn't use excerpts from the Bible. And
Mm.
so it's kind of funny that it's basically rewriting the Genesis, but in a magical way and in a very odd way. Kind of like God is laughing, and that's how he creates the world. And that is how you get to know world. You get to know God by hearing him laugh.
Hmm.
So I find that
I
very
kind of like
interesting.
that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
It brings like a little more joy to it than this little like, "Rah."
Yeah, kind of like you know, you don't need that tree, otherwise I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, it's like such a masculine energy, but it brings in like a little more youthful, like creator vibe. I like that.
Well, it should be even a masculine energy because the the word Elohim, which is like the word that they use for God, or they translated God. Elohim doesn't mean God.
Hmm.
It means judges or measurers. And so the judges or the measurers doesn't really have to mean male God. When God appears to Moses in Mount Zion, he says that he brings his Asherah, his host. And so when God appears, he doesn't appear as a male dude guy. He usually appears with other gods or female hosts,
Yeah,
because
which they
usually the word host usually means like companion, like female companion,
oh,
kind of like the one that throws the parties or accompanies him, or
okay.
so. So the Bible is really not that patriarchal. I mean, it is. It's super patriarchal, especially at the end. But the first books, the Torah, is not very patriarchal. It can be interpreted to be to have a lot of feminine power,
Hmm. Interesting.
for
Very
sure.
interesting. Huh.
Okay, now let's get into the Empress. The Empress is really hard to decode in the Rider Waite. Let me see if I can get here.
What's on her dress? Is that
I don't
also
even. I,
pomegranates?
I think those pomegranates as well.
Okay.
So that's why, like, I think the pomegranates came out. Like, you see that? I think maybe the misogynist one was not even Crowley. It was probably Mathers.
Okay.
That he's equating both the High Priestess and the Empress into one,
Hmm.
but they shouldn't be equated. They're very different, because the High Priestess, she is very like Moon,
Mm.
and then the Empress, she's very Venus.
Mm.
So she should be the one that's Isis, not the High Priestess. The High Priestess should either be Gabriel or should be Hecate. And so, you know, Crowley definitely gave like a lot of Hecate vibes on her because of the moons, and also because she holds the pillars of life and death, and also the pine cones at the bottom, and even you have the little grapes of Dionysus too, which are kind of like, I don't know if we should explain this. There's a book, but this is kind of new. I don't think they knew about this. There is a book called The Golden Plates that talk about how some archaeologists have found like deceased mummies or bodies with little golden pendants. The little golden pendants basically say, Lord Bacchus or Lord Dionysus, save me, me being the son of the earth and of the starry night, or the starry nights.
Oh,
And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of these little plates that these people are asking Lord Bacchus to help them in the afterlife.
interesting.
I know. So we usually equate like Hermes or Hecate with being helpers in the afterlife,
Hmm.
but we never really quite use or conceive Bacchus or Dionysus as a helper in the afterlife or as a savior, because he's basically saying, save me. And of course the Bible is very Jesus saves, right? And
Hmm.
so, but it's obvious that Jesus is Dionysus. It's like he turns water into wine. He has 12 apostles. He was born of a virgin and a god. He's just the New Testament Jesus is very Dionysus. So it's very interesting that we have um, these pendants of these people saying, Bacchus or Dionysus, save me.
Hmm.
because that is like a Jesus type of thing. But of course, the golden pendants archaeology, they don't say Jesus; they say Dionysus or Bacchus.
Interesting.
I know. And so once we see those grapes at the bottom of in the Thot deck in the Priestess card, that is a very Dionysus thing of like being able to save. And then there are other things that, to be perfectly honest, I don't know what they mean. Like that little white camel in the front, I have no idea what that means. Or that sunflower, I don't know what it means either. I don't know if that is something that Lady Harris threw in or what. I know that there were different drafts of these cards, but I have never seen the other drafts. They're supposed to be hidden in some vault, but who knows if they will ever see the light of day.
Interesting.
One thing we do see is kind of like a path towards her. It's like she seems to have like a little net that kind of directs her, that directs the viewer.
Hmm.
No, we're just talking about the thought
Oh,
deck.
okay. Sorry.
There's like a little like a net that kind of directs the viewer to the solar plex of Hecate,
Hmm.
and that is also very Artemis. Uh,
Mm.
Artemis Artemis of Ephesus. She has a bunch of like eggs, or some people think that they're bull testicles on her chest, but that is basically kind of like a hen. She's kind of like a So Artemis is kind of like a hen. She keeps the eggs warm, and she was the one that brings them to life. And that's kind of obvious if we read the Greek magical papyri, because Hecate, she's given that title. She's the one that brings forth life from, and also from the Chaldean oracles. She's the one that brings forth life. And so the vibes of the priestess is very Hecate, like from being the conductor, from life to death, the one that brings forward life, because you have this, and even you can see the little eggs in her chest. It's very Artemis, as far as we see the priestess. And then the Empress is a little bit more arrogant and also gets very Rosicrucian. That
Mm.
little swan at the bottom,
Yeah.
uh, it also has these little cheeks. That is a Rosicrucian symbol. It basically means that I sacrifice myself for you so that you can come to life. And so that is a very, very Rosicrucian symbol. The two-headed eagle, that can either be what should we say, a Scottish rite kind of thing, but it's also a Dionysus and Apollo thing, where one is light and the other one is day. She also carries a lotus in her hand. The lotus, that we already kind of described in the card of the magician, is the conduction between kind of like the conscious and the unconscious. So in this regard, she is the one that is displaying the power between the conscience and the unconscious. So as we do, like people do tarot divination readings with these cards, that is a very important symbol to consider, and also with conjunction with her crown of Isis that she's also wearing. So she has the conscious and the unconscious. She's the priestess of the unconscious and the unconscious, whereas the priestess, she's the priestess between life and death. And so they're kind of similar in that regard. And they also have the moon. They also have the two moons. Were you gonna say something?
Um, yeah, also it's gonna come down to what is the Hebrew letter
That's
on
the
the
left.
bottom of
For the Empress. That's the left. Oh yeah, we should talk about that. So the
what's it called?
priestess, the left,
How do you spell that?
Daleth, the left.
Okay. Okay. I feel like I should my Hebrew is so rusty, which is hilarious that I even studied some of this. It's very funny. The left.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so Gimel. Oh yeah, that's probably why that camel is there. Gimel is also kind of translated as kind of like in the Golden Dawn. Gimel is kind of like represented by the camel, but I don't think it's the camel because I don't know. It's just like the Golden Dawn Kabbalah is so weak. It's like it doesn't make that much sense. It's just like why, what for, kind of for, and so it's just weird. But Gimel is a letter of transformation, the letter of carrying things. We started with Aleph, which is kind of like creation, death, and then Beth, which was kind of like affirmation, home, establishment, and then now we get to Gimel, which is more like a transportation, movement, action, not like powerful action, but more like movement action. um, and then Dalet is more like a, I don't know. The Golden Dawn is door, but the is more like a gate or kind of like entrance or a new beginning. And so when we have the Empress with the Lotus one, is basically a new stage of consciousness begins. So now we have entered into a new stage of consciousness, and so that's why sometimes we have the swan with the little cheeks at the bottom, because it's kind of like something has died or is sacrificing itself so that something new may come.
Mm.
And then you have your night and your day, your night and your day. Basically, one period ends and the other one begins, which is kind of like, in a way, people are afraid of the death card, but these two are death cards.
Okay.
It's like one has the priesthood over life and death, and the other one has the priesthood over the conscious and the unconscious, or maybe something that someone or the people that is asking for the reading was not quite aware of, and now they're suddenly becoming aware of. And so they're both very transitory cards for sure.
Yeah, interesting. I'm gonna go back to the Rider Waite really quick because I have like a little cheat sheet thing
Yeah,
talking about
sure.
the differences between the cards. The High Priestess like notes is like intuitive understanding, staying passive, seeing potential, sensing the mystery, patience, calm. The emphasis is on spiritual, may have sexual overtones, have confidence in your senses and intuitions, could be magical, time for love. And it says something like lack of insight, foolishness over sensitive. I think it's more like for divination. But then the Empress card says ideas, germination, abundance, sensual pleasure, beauty, physical connection, good health. Archetype of feminine power, motherly, protector, creator, nurturer, hard to fathom, mysterious, fertile, sexual, very potent time for love.
They're equating both. I disagree with the sexual part for the High Priestess.
Okay.
The High Priestess is a virgin.
Oh,
She,
interesting.
she's very powerful. She's very sure of herself. She does not need anybody. She's just the master. But
Okay.
the Empress, since she's Venus, she's Aphrodite. And so she is complete sexual. Yes, that is definitely true.
Okay.
There are very powerful sexual connotations between the Empress because of the Venus aspect.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I looking at these decks, I would have not gathered sex from any of them.
And you can kind of see it even in the Pixie Myth deck. It's like the High Priestess is very rigid, very hard, whereas the Empress is kind of like lounging, more aloof, kind of like crossing her legs a little bit, kind of in a sexy way.
Yeah.
But the High
She looks
Priestess
comfortable.
is very powerful.
Yeah. And her dress is very like watery. Like, it's giving like Cancer vibes.
Yeah, it's also kind of like a nightgown,
Yeah.
which is kind of like loose, kind of. But then the High Priestess is a very rigid kind of toga. I'm a scholar kind of person. She has a scroll that says tarot in her arms. So she's obviously a priestess, a learned princess. But then the Empress is just kind of like I'm just chilling here. I have power, but I'm just kind of chilling. I have some notes for the Empress. We shall
Yeah.
read them. It says the Empress. She wears she wears a kind of like a golden necklace
Hmm.
with points. The points represent the elements. It represents earth, spirit, fire, water. Uh, she also has a kind of like a wand that represents the elements of sulfur, salt, and mercury.
Oh, wait. Say
Uh,
that again.
she also represents the alchemical elements: sulfur, salt, and mercury.
Interesting. I don't know, besides, I mean, I know what sulfur and salt are for, but how does that bring into mercury?
Oh man, this is a whole alchemical talk. There are three stages of alchemy. There are three stages of alchemy. There is the salt is the body, then the mercury is the mind, and then the sulfur is the soul or the spirit.
Okay.
So when we break in alchemy, this is like the basis of alchemy. When we break down the any compound
Hmm.
or any plant, for example, if you use a Paracelsian type of alchemy,
Yeah.
we break down the body of the plant, and then the ashes turn into kind of like the salt. That's the body, and
Hmm.
then the liquid is the mind, and then the smoke is the spirit.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
in the Paracelsian alchemy, we're drinking the liquid, so the distillation. That is why when we drink wine, it's called a spirit, because we're drinking the spirit of the plant,
Mm.
or like wine. That is why wine is called a spirit as well, like because wine is the spirit of the grape,
Oh,
and
I love that.
so that's the sulfur. So so when we so yeah, so the Empress also carries that connotation of the alchemical principles.
Okay, that's dope.
And then on her crown, she carries a bunch of stars.
Yeah.
What else we got?
What's the heart? I know that's the symbol of Venus, but is the heart and anything else? It kind of looks like one of those Ouija board, like.
Yeah, it's very Aphrodite. She's
Okay.
like heart, Venus, female energy, female power, and also kind of like female, kind of like also sexual power. You
Okay.
know, she is very sure of herself, very sure of her sexuality, and she uses it as a tool for power.
Yeah,
Very
I can.
style. Yeah,
She's made herself comfortable.
that's right. She knows the strength. She knows the strength of her power for sure
I
through
feel
her
like the high
sexuality.
priestess is like singular, like channeled energy with like yourself and like the knowing and contained in a weird way. And then this one's like an expression like outwardly.
Yes, very much so. Yep, it's very Hecate or Artemis versus very Aphrodite for
Okay.
sure. And yeah, Aphrodite, you know, there were kind of like orgies that were conducted in her honor.
Yeah.
There were the holy prostitutes that it was also a sign of devotion for Aphrodite, for women, married women, to prostitute themselves at the temple of Aphrodite, uh, and so it was just part of
Like
the
in
tradition.
exchange for money? Is that the way that they're calling prostitutes, or is there like a different way?
I think it was a little bit of both. It was born not only for money, but it was also for like for devotion.
Okay.
Yeah, the story goes. I haven't read in the original Hebrew, but the story goes that there was a tradition in a certain time of the year where certain sailors came into the port, and the tradition was that certain women, particularly married women, yeah, her devotion to Aphrodite was to prostitute themselves to these sailors, and then that was the sacrifice that they made to the goddess.
I'm just trying to figure out like what. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like mentally. So did these guys know?
Yeah, the husbands knew.
And then the guys coming into port, did they know that their energy was being like used as a devotion, or were they just getting like like pleasure and gratification? I have so many questions.
I don't know, but they knew that there a lot of sailors came in for the festival of Aphrodite because they knew that they were gonna get lucky.
Yeah, I mean, fuck yeah.
Yes. So yeah, that was part of that was part of the tradition. And in fact, even in Rome, I think that also kind of was going on, because right in front of the Colosseum there was the temple of Venus, but she was also called Amor, or Roma. So it's Venus in the front and then Roma on the back. I've been there. It's kind of like two altars, and then the story goes that in the Colosseum there were a lot of prostitutes. So I wonder if there was a relationship between the position of the Temple of Venus in front of the Colosseum and the prostitutes in the Colosseum. But that was certainly a traditional thing. It was not frowned upon. Prostitution was not looked down upon like we do. For example, even the Japanese, for example, they have the geishas. They have like legal prostitution. It's part of their culture.
Yeah.
For us, prostitution is a little bit more frowned upon because of the 2,000 years of Christian indoctrination that we have had, where prostitution is just it's just kind of like I don't know, just women get a very bad rap for anything.
Yeah.
Like Eve being the one that caused you know Adam and Eve from falling from paradise.
Yes.
There is so much BS. But in the past, women had power. Women had power. In fact, the Spartan women, in fact, I don't think even Spartan men were allowed to have property. The property was owned by women. And in fact, the Athenian women asked the Spartan men, the Athenian women asked the Spartan women, how come you guys are the only ones that can own property? And then the Spartan women said, because we're the only ones that can that can create men. And so it was a very empowering thing for the Spartans. The Scythians, the same thing. The Scythians were very female oriented. There had been ruins, archaeological findings of Scythian powerful warriors. So women certainly had a more powerful and prominent position in society than they do today, to this day. And so to them, prostitution wasn't necessarily kind of like a cheapening way, a way to cheapen women, but it was women basically, I'm going to worship my goddess the way I want to worship my goddess, and I don't give a crap.
I love that. That's dope.
Yeah.
Weird. I sat with Eve today in the ceremony, and it was like a lot, but obviously a lot to process, a lot of feelings and stuff. But it was it was an enlightening ceremony, to say the least.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you. That was cool. And what about so I see like the bottom of the high priestess here is like water elements at the bottom of her skirt, but then the Empress, I see like, I think that's that wheat.
Yeah, correct. So
Okay.
you have water, very Hecate, very subconscious, very waters of the death, and then the wheat is kind of like bring forth of nourishment, bring forth life. Kind of like very Aphrodite, kind of like the nourishment of women. Like the harvesting of life, very womb-like. So yeah, very Hecate and Aphrodite kind of thing.
Oh, that's really cool. Thank you. Okay, we can go back to the other one now. That I feel good about that.
Now I don't have much more to say on these two cards. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm not as versed. So, and it's also getting kind of chilly. So I don't know if you want to kind of end this so I can go inside and warm up, and we'll prepare for the Spanish one. That's okay.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that was enlightening for sure. All right, awesome. Well, thank you, and for whoever is watching, and eventually we at 9 o'clock our time.
Unless we have any questions. If we have any questions, just bring them up. I don't know.
No, just my questions. I'm just like learning live.
All right, cool.
Okay, perfect. I will see you at 9 o'clock for Spanish.
Right on. Cool. Thank you, Julie. Have a great. Cool. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.